If you could just say how old were you, what all was it like to be not only in the military but of that age?
Right. Well, it was an anxious time. I'm at the end of the Vietnam War era. Do I look at the camera here?
No, you're good. You just
It was consuming for people my age, however, and nothing short of that. You were in school. I was in between college and law school
right.
when I went to active duty, and I had an unusual track record. I started in the Army and went through basic training and advanced training in the Army, and was in for not quite a year. And then there was a need for naval intelligence officers at that time. So I applied hoping I could become a naval intelligence officer because that would be better.
Right.
And I had to go for more training, but you took a bunch of tests and went to several interviews, and you had to get security clearances.
Right.
And I never learned anything terribly important, but I did have a top secret clearance. So I went in. I served in active duty for something less than a year, and then I went on reserve status, and that was the way a whole lot of people were at the time. You were on call to go.
Right.
And my unit received some alerts to go to Vietnam.
Right.
But
where were you
we were not
stationed
called.
during that?
I went to, the Navy training was in Norfolk, and I went some to Jacksonville, Florida.
Right.
And it's difficult to imagine the time of people. I mean, I was 22 years old.
Right.
So it's difficult to imagine the intensity of the feelings about the war. People who were, the history shows that for the first time in American history, there was a divisiveness about entering a war that was so deep that you just couldn't imagine it. And when I started law school, because I was through with active duty, we had people who were sitting beside each other in law school classes who were some Vietnam veterans who had been in the front lines, some wounded, beside people who were adamantly opposed to the war, men and women. And I remember some demonstrations. I went to Duke for law school, and there were some demonstrations on the campus when some of the people who were called out to marshal the demonstrations and to keep order were in class with people who were marching.
What did you think of personally? What did you think at the time? Like, what was your experience with all that division?
Well, I was as time went on and the more I learned, the more deeply suspicious I became that what we were doing in Vietnam was not nearly worth the price we were paying. I wanted to be called up, and I didn't want to be called up. I had a split feeling about it. But the tragedy of the loss of life in Vietnam for people my age and older has been something that has marked my life. I mean, I know people who died there, and through the 20/20 hindsight of history, should never have been there.
Right. How has your memory of Vietnam or your opinion towards it changed?
Well, I think of no opportunity or challenge for America to enter a conflict without processing it through the Vietnam experience, such as I had.
Right.
And make no doubt, I was never in danger. I was never in any peril of losing any life or being wounded. So I have two thoughts. One is my hat is off to forever those who served over there, and to the families of those whose sons did not return. I don't say daughters because there just were such a few. I don't know. We probably did lose some women, but I think of it as sons. And I don't think of any conflict in which we are entered or about to enter without thinking of, it comes through the Vietnam experience.
When did you enter the Navy or the Army or whatever?
It was in '69
Okay.
and '70, right in there, and I stayed in because of reserves till '76.
Okay.
So I stayed in.
So how was that? As you know, I guess you started while it was already unpopular.
Oh yeah.
Unpopular idea, but it only got more unpopular. How
Oh
was
yeah.
that? Kind of watching, especially like within the military. How did people feel about it?
Oh well, you did your duty, whatever your feelings about the conduct of the war, and that wasn't hard for me at all. I mean, I'd taken an oath to do my duty, and
Right.
I didn't give a second thought to getting the job done that I needed to do, and I think no one did. There were thousands and thousands of people who died in Vietnam, absolutely convinced it was a horrific idea for us to be in the war. That didn't forget me. I'm here. People there on the front lines, they knew better than I that this was a very poor idea. I mean, it's a tragic idea. Very poor, didn't get close to it. But that didn't diminish their valor or sense of duty.
Right.
The media's contribution during that period, I wouldn't say the media came of age for foreign affairs during that period, because that had happened certainly in World War II with the great reporters of that era. I think of Edward R. Murrow most prominently.
Okay.
But the report, I mean, Walter Cronkite's reports on Vietnam during the Vietnam War were a mainstay for nearly every American. If not he, David Brinkley and Chet Huntley, they were the NBC anchors. And they were building or burnishing a remarkable reputation.
Right.
Vietnam figures into my thinking about every single armed conflict we're about to enter.
Right.
And I think it does for anyone my